Danny Flexon here for SecondsOut. Delighted to be joined by my good friend, top trainer and manager, Tony SIMS. Tony, how are you?
Yeah, good, thanks, Danny.
You sound it. You sound delighted to be here. You had a great win at the weekend. Joe Cordina had a great win. You were in the corner, of course, over Kenichi Ogawa, IBF super featherweight title. Before we talk about that specifically, do you have any idea how many world champions you've worked with or how many world titles fighters with you have won at this point?
I think that was my 5th one, but I've obviously worked with quite a few other world champions, obviously, down the years. But for me personally, it's probably my 5th, yeah.
Who are the 5? Obviously, Darren Barker.
If we can count Johnryder's interim in Vegas, and then Ricky Burns, obviously Anthony Joshua, when he won the IBF.
Yeah.
And Darren Barker. And then obviously Joe, yeah.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
How does this one compare to the others?
Oh, yeah, they're all fantastic, aren't they, when you win them, do you know what I mean? And like Saturday night was a great atmosphere, and it was, you know, to see Joe, the sacrifice that he's made, like living away from home for the last 6 years. Obviously, he lives in Essex with me when he's training. So I obviously, you know, I see him close up, like, you know, talking to his kids on the video app, and, you know, having to like miss birthdays and stuff like that. I obviously see it firsthand because he lives in the same house as me. But so seeing them sort of sacrifices he's made the last 6 years, and then to go into his hometown and produce like, you know, a stunning knockout like that as well to lift the title, you know, it was, you know, I was elated for him. I really was. And, you know, they're all nice to win world titles, but, you know, that was a special night Saturday night.
Since he moved across to your gym, has he always lived with you as well? Yeah.
Yeah, he's, well, no, actually, when he first moved down here, him and Ricky Burns was living in like, they was living in like a house, yeah. And then what happened was I was building like an annex on the side of my house. So when that was finished, they both moved into the annex. And then obviously, you know, Ricky went back to Scotland after a few years. And so Joe stays on his own with me now.
What's that like, sharing your home with a fighter as well as, you know, working with him in the gym?
Well, I don't really talk to him at night because I just go in the other room and watch. I'll go in the room and watch the telly. And I don't know whether sometimes that gets on his nerves, but sometimes I do it purposely because I don't want him to feel like he's in camp and everything's like, you know, everything's like homely and you're having a bit of a, you know what I mean? Everything's got to be tough. Like he comes in and like he has to cook his own dinner, do his own washing. And sometimes my wife says to me, "Oh, shall I do his dinner or do his cooking?" I go, "No, because he's got to be tough. He's got to be tough down here, mate. You know what I mean? He ain't like, you know, getting everything done for him. He's got to do it himself." And I don't always talk to him when I get in the gym. I'll just go in the other room and watch telly and leave him on his own. But, you know, that's what training camp's about. It's the tough sport. And you got to be tough to be in this sport. And, you know, you have to make them tough as well. So, but he was on GB for a long time anyway beforehand. So he knows all the coup of it all. Do you know what I mean? He knows like living away from home and preparing all his own food and that. He knows what he's doing. So he's done it for quite a long while.
Talking about his time on GB, you get a lot of fighters when they turn over pro who say, "Oh, I've always had a bit of a pro style. This should suit me." No one would have said that about Joe Cordina back then. How much has he transformed in your gym to become what he is now?
Yeah, he worked hard to transform himself, and I had that problem with Darren Barker years ago. That, you know, both of them are very similar. They were top amateurs, and you know, it's quite harder for them to break out of that style of boxing where they've been successful as amateurs, and then mold them into a pro. But by spending quite a bit of time with them. They, you know, and if they're a clever individual fighter as well, they're, you know, they make the transition, and both of them made the transition for top amateurs to both win world titles. And obviously it's a lot harder, but where there's a will, there's a way, mate. And you know, they both done it. So you know, that's another thing that they can put a feather in their cap and say that they went from top scoring, amateur point scoring fighters into top pros, you know, and very few do that.
And looking at his previous performances, Kenichi Ogawa, you must have been expecting a tough 10, 12 round fight, depending on how long it went. Surely you weren't expecting a stoppage or a knockout that early. Oh,
of course not. You know, you look at Kenichi Ogawa and like 26 fights with 18 KOs, you know, he carries power, and he's been in with like high grade fighters. Like he beat Tevin Farmer, even that was a no decision in the end. You know, he beat Fuzili quite convincingly. So he's been in with like, you know, top rank opposition, and you know, basically and he's basically beat him. So, you know, going into that fight, we knew he was a big KO puncher, and but Joe's always been, you know, I said this to him the other night, funny enough, he's never had any doubts in his mind that he'll be a world champion. He's never doubted himself once. And he's always had that confidence to know that once he gets there, he's going to lift the world title. And it was funny, we were talking the day before, we was walking along, and he said to me, I said to him, how do you feel about tomorrow night? And he said, Tone, let me tell you something, there's no way that I am going to lose in front of all my hometown people, all my family and friends that have supported me through the years. There's no way in a million years I'm going to lose to this geezer tomorrow night. You know, and right then and there, you could see, you know, he'd have done anything, determined to do anything, to walk through anything, to lift that title. And as you say, of course, I never expected that one punch KO knockout. I don't think anyone did, but the way he trained and the way his mental state was, I did expect him to win that fight in obviously a hard grueling fight, but I did expect him to come out the victor.
You didn't expect him to win in that fashion, but you had practiced that move, that shot. Is that something you practice regularly in the gym, or was it specifically for Ogawa?
No, I practiced it in the gym for the last 6 years. He's probably practiced that shot, but he sort of pulled it off with the American Hernandez, that same sort of shot, and done him in the first round with it. And we was practicing that shot for the last 10 weeks because Ogawa's style of like he defends with his feet, not with his head movement. So when they defend with their feet and they take that half a step back, they like to counter you with the shot. So by feinting that jab to the body, he takes his hands down a little bit away from his head, and you know, you ping the shot over the top. We call it a Roberto Duran shot because he used to throw it all the time. And you know, if they took the half a step back and you feint it to the body and you ping the right hand over the top, but as you see, it catches them flush, so they don't see it coming. So we had practiced that a lot in camp.
So that's the Duran. I know Darren used to do the Carlos Zarate. How many different ones are there, like combos or shots that you've got named after great fighters?
Well, there's 50 on the wall in the gym.
Wow.
That over the years that I've watched fighters throw, and then I sort of wrote them down at the time, you know. And like when you see like Tony Zhao knocking out Rocky Graziano with a combination right hand under the arc, left hook over the top. So what I've done over the years is I've wrote them down, and then eventually I got them printed on the board, and I make my fighters learn them combinations. Obviously, they're knockout combinations, the ones that are up there. So, you know, you make them learn them, but you know, you don't know when you're going to throw them or at, you know, when that's going to be. But when you do throw them, it's already embedded into your brain, so you throw them naturally. Because I do it on the pads with them constantly. Do you know what I mean? So especially in their early days in the gym, so that they can reel off like one after the other. So they'll know out of them 50 shots, they'll probably any one of them could reel off the first 20 shots straight away. So, and then when you do that time and time again, then it just sometimes it just comes naturally. You know, I remember when Conor Benn first boxed out in New York, and he was a few years ago, and he knocked the geezer out with a Tony Zal shot. You know what I mean? Straight away, he said to me afterwards, "I threw the Zal shot. Didn't know I was going to throw it, and just pinged him." Do you know what I mean? So you don't know, and like that shot there, Joe must have thrown that a million times in the gym, but you know, on the night that it mattered, he connected with it lovely and done the business.
Great stuff. Now, almost immediately after he won against the Gower, people started talking about a possible future fight with Shakur Stevenson, a unification fight. Was that a little bit frustrating that, you know, talk soon turned to the future? It wasn't much kind of letting him revel in the moment.
I think he said that at the press conference. I don't really want to talk about opponents. I just want to enjoy my moment. You know, I said, I don't mind having a week of like enjoying my moment. Then I'll talk about opponents. But he's got a mandatory to do anyway against Rikimov. So he's got to get that out of the way before he does anything really. And we knew that all along that he'd have to do that mandatory. It was the only reason the IBF let Joe fight a Gal for the title is that the winner defends against Rikimov, so he's got to get that fight out of the way yet.
What sort of challenge does Rikimov pose?
Good challenge. You know, we know he fought Jojo Diaz. They had a draw, wasn't it, down that fight? It was a good fight, actually. And before that, he knocked out Azinga Fuzili in the 8th round. So he's a tough Russian southpaw. Unbeaten himself, and you know, but they're all tough at this level, aren't they? You don't get an easy fight once you're up there. They say, you know, getting up there is hard, but staying there is even harder. And there's no easy defenses, or what, you know, all these fights are going to be at that level now. So, you know, it's just about getting your head down and then winning the next fight and then going on. And if the unifications come, you know, you got Roger Guterres, who's the WBA champion. Then obviously Shakur Stevenson's got the WBO and the WBC. So it might be nice that if Joe beats Rikimov to fight Guterres after that one and unify that title, you know, and maybe look at this Shakur Stevenson one down the line. But you never know what happens in boxing. You never know. Everything happens all of a sudden. So, you know, we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, it might be nice to build Joe as even more of an attraction before that undisputed fight, if that's what it's going to be.
Yeah, that's right. And I think, like, you know, he could have probably sold that stadium out twice over in Cardiff. And, you know, that's another thing as well. He's like, his next fight down there, like, where do you put the fight on? Because aside from that stadium there, you know, the next thing's either on the pitch at Cardiff or, you know, the Principality, which is obviously a bit too big for him at the moment. But, you know, there's not like a 10,000 seater down there in Cardiff. So, you know, I don't know really what we'll you know, where the fight will be next. Maybe it'll be back at the Motor Point again, but because it's a great atmosphere there. But he could definitely sell that twice over.
What's the latest on Conor Benn? It seems like a bit of a struggle to find him an opponent for the next one.
Just waiting on Matchroom and Eddie Hearn to, you know, work out his next opponent. You know, he's eyeing all the ratings now. He's really eyeing all of them. So just waiting for Matchroom to, you know, get the right opponent and move into that world title shot, really. Him and Furman are ranked pretty close together. So I wouldn't be surprised if someone like the WBO organisation, you know, orders a final eliminator. So if that fight comes along, definitely take it. You still got Usyk out there, who recently lost to Spence. It'd be a good fight for Conor Benn. You know, that's that sort of name that he needs to fight now, a big name.
And there's been a lot of talk that Crawford against Spence, undisputed title fight in that division's pretty much signed and sealed now for, I think they said October. If that is the case, how do you see that one panning out?
Oh, it's a fantastic fight. You know, it's the fight that, you know, a lot of fans have been calling for the last couple of years now. And, you know, I can't wait to see that fight, to be honest. And it'll be, you know, it'll be a great fight. I think Crawford might beat Spence, to be honest. I think he might just have a bit too much in his armory for him. But, you know, it's a 50-50 fight, that's for sure. And it'd be interesting to see the victor of that fight, what their next move is, whether, you know, because both of them are talking about moving up a weight. So it'd be interesting to see what they do and how that leaves the rest of the division, because if 4 belts will become vacant, then obviously Conor Benn's definitely in for a shout with one of them belts.
Then we've got Johnryder as well, coming off a really good win over Danny Jacobs, but then it seems to have gone a bit quiet since then. I know there was talk of Canelo maybe coming over in December, and he was in the mix for that. But what does he do in the interim?
Yeah, you're right, Dan. He was in the mix for that. There was well, Eddie Hearn was telling me that Canelo was going to, obviously before the Bivol loss, that after the Bivol fight, that he was fighting Golovkin in September the 17th. And then in December, he was gonna come to the UK and fight John, probably at the Cardiff Stadium. But obviously, that's all gone up in the air now with the shock loss to Bivol. I believe that Canelo's gonna, after Golovkin fight, he's gonna do his return clause in a contract and fight Bivol again, which leaves John a little bit out in the open again. So I spoke to Eddie on the weekend when I was with him, and obviously they're trying to get a big name opponent for John, because like you can't just keep sitting around waiting to see what Canelo's going to do. But they're looking for another big name opponent. But the shame of it is where Canelo's got all 4 belts. Like obviously, unless you fight him, you ain't fighting for a world title, and it's just like it's really frustrating, you know, because. Not just for us. He's got other mandatories that, you know, looking for fights. You know, you got Benavides and, you know, other fighters like that are up high in the rankings and, you know, want to fight for the world title. But what John's got to do is Eddie's got to do is just try and nail down a big name opponent again for John, i.e. like the Jacobs, and just keep busy really, and then waiting for your opportunity. But by the sounds of it, his opportunity for a world title ain't going to come to like next spring now, by the sounds of things.
Is that a concern with John? I mean, he's quite fresh, but he's not as young as he was. You know, is that a worry that he'll wait too long for that title shot?
Of course, yeah. And, you know, that's always the shame of it. And although we all love to see the unification fights, we like one champion. He does like really hold all the other number 1 contenders back, because they're just not getting their shot. And you know, that was eliminated that John won last time for the WBA. So, you know, as I say, like all the organisations have all got like number 1 and number 2 contenders, and everyone's waiting for this shot. But what do? Do you sit around forever and just wait for your one shot, or just keep busy? I think John would rather, you know, fight another big name and get a decent payday and keep busy, really. You know, and that's what we're going to try and do. Hopefully by September, October, he'll be fighting again.
And when we talked about your 5 world champions at the start, one of them was, of course, Anthony Joshua when he won the IBF against Charles Martin. He's recently been linked up with a new trainer or assistant trainer. I'm not sure exactly what his role is going to be, in Robert Garcia, who's now over here, linked up with Angel Fernandez. What do you make of that as an addition to Joshua's training team?
Yeah, I've said before, when, I don't know, it was you I was interviewed, I can't remember now, but someone was asking me before, like, what do I think of, you know, his new trainer and Angel, and I said, like, I don't believe that he won't bring in an experienced trainer, because Angel's not experienced enough to do that sort of fight. You know, bringing Robert Garcia in, I think it's a good move, because if you're going to lose someone like Robert McCracken, who's obviously a top trainer with bundles of experience at world level, you need to bring in someone else of that sort of level. And you know, I know Robert on a personal level. When I travel to LA for sparring or boxing, even I always use his gym, and he always sorts me out good sparring. He's a very nice man, and he's got a wealth of experience. And you know, his type of fighters are aggressive fighters. He works in an aggressive style of fighting, and I think it's a good move for Joshua, because obviously Joshua in the fight against Usyk, he's got to be aggressive in the fight, and you know, but not just wild. He's got to be smart and aggressive. And by bringing in Robert Garcia, I think it's a really good move.
Great stuff, Tony. Really appreciate your time. Congratulations on the latest world champion. You've got to start the route towards 10 now, so that'll take you a few years maybe, but I'm sure you'll get there. And yeah, great result of the weekend. Lovely. Thanks, Danny. Always good talking to you, mate. And you, mate. Take care.